why she was there. She didn't know. She had never visited a palm reader before because she didn't believe in psychics. What kind of a message could a psychic have? And yet there she was, standing outside of the place, looking up at the very large blue teacup that was the sign. The bottom of the cup, tea room, it said, sounded innocent enough. And she wanted answers. But would she find them there? She was in New Orleans, and what was that saying? When in Rome? Yeah. She stepped over the granite front step and into the shop. And there was so much tea, more tea than she had ever seen in one place. Tea from India and China. There were mugs for drinking tea, and there were tea towels. And then she looked up and she saw the sign at the back of the room that said psychic readings. She hesitated. And that's when she noticed the old woman in the patchwork skirt and the denim shirt looking at her. The old woman saw her reading the sign and asked her if she would like a reading. She hesitated. Was that why she was there? How much? She asked. The old woman said, $25, and you'll get a recording of your reading. She shrugged. Why not? The woman smiled and nodded in encouragement and led her down a small hallway with doors on both sides. She led her into a room that was just large enough for a table and 2 chairs. The woman took her hand in, looked it over, and then she began to speak. Her words were encouraging. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. Echoing the prophet Isaiah, who spoke these words so long ago to encourage a people who had lost all hope. A people who were trying to rebuild their community under the difficult circumstances of return from being exiled in a foreign land, Babylon. Arise, shine, for your light has come. Had she been languishing in despair? She thought it over for a moment or two. What about you, beloved? Are you languishing in despair? Are you worried or anxious or scared? If you are, this oracle specifically states that the time for despair is over. God is about to act. And God is calling us to respond in faith before God even acts. And that's so tough, isn't it? To respond in faith, to take that step, no matter how big you feel your faith is or how small you know your faith is. God is calling us to take that step. To lift up our eyes and look around. Look and see what is not yet true. God asks us to wait eagerly in anticipation for what is about to come, trusting that God will fulfill God's promises. They all gather here together. They come to you. Your sons will come from far away. Your daughters will be carried on their nurses' arms. The oracle is telling us that God's people will come to us. Are we ready? God is calling us to shine brightly, to show the rest of the world God's presence. So, beloved, how will you shine God's light? Because if you haven't thought about shining brightly before, now is the time. How will you shine brightly? How will you show others that Christ resides in you? We have an opportunity to do that next week. We will be welcoming people who might not have ever stepped inside the sanctuary of a church, who might have only worshiped God in a mosque. How will we welcome them here in this place? How will we invite them here in this place to meet God? Are we willing to give up our seats for them? I've noticed over the last couple of years I've been here that we tend to really hold on tight to our seats. What'd you say, Jen? I heard you over there. It's a habit. I know. And sometimes we need to break those habits, right? Think about the first time you came to the church. Where did you want to sit? Elizabeth, where did you want to sit the first time you came to this church? Right there in the back. Well, how can you sit in the back if there are no spaces back there? We get into habits, like Ginny said. So are you willing, beloved, to give up your seats for them? Are we willing to come out of our comfort zones and speak to people who are different than we are? Are you willing to care for them? To love them? The oracle says, "Then you shall see, and you will be radiant. And your heart shall thrill and rejoice, because the abundance of the sea shall come to you, and the wealth of all nations shall be brought to you." Beloved, that's a prophecy that has already come true. And if you don't believe me, look around. We have children here. We have people here that we've been missing. We still have a lot of empty seats for people that can be invited to come. But we are so incredibly blessed already. Isn't that what we've spent the last week celebrating with our families and our friends? The abundant blessings that God has so richly bestowed upon us. The oracle speaks of hope and peace and reconciliation. And that is our calling, beloved. God calls us to be agents of that hope and that peace by believing in God and what God is doing in our lives and in our church and in our community and in our world. And for some of us, that's a really difficult thing to do, isn't it? To place our trust in God. Because some of us, it's just easier if we do it ourselves. It'll be done the way we want if we do it by ourselves. How can we trust God, especially when things are not going the way that we think they should be going? When we look around our communities and we see all the division and the fighting that's going on, and the war, and the hunger, and the homelessness, when we see those same things in our churches and in our families. Like I mentioned before, it was Thanksgiving this past week. And I don't know if any of you are big fans of Pittsburgh Dad, but I love him. And he had a little segment on talking to his kids about what not to say on Thanksgiving. Don't talk about the election. Don't talk about Uncle Steve's DUI. Don't talk about Aunt Susie's too tight sweater. Don't talk about Cousin Cindy's racy Facebook post. Don't talk about, his list went on and on and on. And then he finally said, "Oh, just take out your phones and look at those." It's ironic, isn't it, that social media, the things that are supposed to bring us closer together, actually bring us farther apart by creating this false sense of connection. It's easier to send a text or to message someone than it is to pick up the phone or go over and visit. How is God calling us to be agents of peace in this hurting world? When we're struggling with these divisions, when we're worried, when we're anxious, when we're languishing in despair, it can be difficult to see God's light. And some of us know that darkness shall cover the earth and thick darkness will be among the people. Some of us know that darkness. We know it intimately because we've lived through that darkness, or maybe we're living in that darkness right now. But beloved, there is hope. Because there is no place that God's light cannot shine. There is no place that God's light cannot break through. There is no darkness that is so dark that God's light can't shatter it. And that's what the prophet is telling us today. Coming just over the horizon. Imagine when that light breaks over the city of Zion, the kingdom of heaven will be radiant, filled with the light of the glory of God. Can you see it? Maybe if you squint your eyes shut, you can just start to see the light. It's in our brothers and our sisters, in our neighbors and our cousins. It's even in that relative, you know the one I'm talking about, that comes to Thanksgiving and just drives you bajonkers. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, it's probably you. No, I'm just kidding. God's light is even in that relative. The oracle invites us as weary people to stand in God's light, to be bathed in God's light. And that light will transform us and give us the strength and the courage. That light will enable God's people to encourage one another. That light will help God's people to stand and face a different future. And when we are overflowing with God's light, beloved, we become beacons of light. I picture us as little lighthouses, little living lighthouses going around shining God's light so brightly so that we might be able to complete the task that God has set before us. And that can be a difficult task, to love our enemies, to pray for the people that hurt us, to forgive when we just can't do it on our own. These are all things that God asks us to do as a reconciling people, to bring peace. But we do not work in vain, beloved, even though it might seem like it at times. The prophet reminds us that there is no failure when we work together for God, that all things are possible. And then she shook her head. The half an hour was up before she knew it, and soon she found herself outside, back on the sidewalk. Her purse was a little bit lighter, but she couldn't stop the smile that spread across her face. And so she walked along Chartier Street, smiling at everyone who crossed her path, refreshed, renewed, rejuvenated. And she felt the light that she carried in her heart shining so brightly. It was as though everyone could see it. And she vowed to burn a little brighter this Advent season. And she knew without a shadow of a doubt that the best is yet to come. Amen.